folks. We'll be doing identifying employers who match your values. So if that is not the session you intended to attend, please feel free to look at your schedule and move rooms. It won't hurt our feelings. At least it won't hurt mine. I don't know about you, Brayden. My name is Jenny Kim. I use she, her pronouns. I serve as, I'm supposed to hold this, sorry. I serve as the assessment coordinator in the CSU Career Center. So it's just fancy for I do surveys and data and that sort of stuff.
And I don't know if this is working, but hi, my name is Brayden. He, him pronouns. I work at the, there we go. I work at the Career Center as the Student Employee Development Coordinator. So I see a few supervisors in here. Maybe this is the first time you might be actually be seeing me in person. I usually see you all on online training, so it's nice to see everyone.
So as a good assessment person that I am, I have some learning outcomes today. So this is what we're hoping to accomplish in our time. Really, I'm going to turn this into like real words. What you'll see at the table, or what we have at the table for you all, are some cards. Those are value sort cards. So a lot of this time together is going to be spent in self-reflection and thinking about what are the values that you hold. Because how are you supposed to find employers that match your values if you don't know what your values are yourself? So Brayden and I will be guides today and guiding you through some activities. So once you've had an opportunity to think about what your values are, we'll talk about how does that might show up in a workplace, how might that show up in a job search, and then that will lead into us doing actual mock searching. So we have some job descriptions for you all to see, really put this into practice. I think oftentimes in these trainings we stop at the now you have your values, go on, and it's like, well, what the heck am I supposed to do with those now? So that's our hope for you all today, and being in this room, that is now what you've committed to. No, you can get up and leave at any time, but our hope is that you gain something for yourself out of this today. Are there any questions? So speaking of this, of the value cards, Brayden, would you do me a favor? Will you move the cards around to make sure everyone has a deck? So Brayden's going to move these around. So what you're going to get is a deck of cards. Some of them spilled out a little bit. So, but in your deck of cards, whoops, you'll have cards that say these 5 things, and you're going to lay those out in front of you, similarly like this. And then you're going to look at these cards and you're going to read and sort. Do not put all the cards in always. This activity is going to be very hard if you put all of your cards in always valued. But I want you to read the card and think about, first, what does this word mean to me? These cards aren't the end-all be-all of definitions. We might change them up. So what does the word mean to you? These cards also might not capture all of your values. My top value is equity. Equity doesn't show up in these, so I write my own. So there is opportunity to create your own if you're not feeling like these cards are really meeting your needs. These were created based on research done by a white dude of a bunch of white leaders, right? And so it might not land for all of us, and so I wanted to give you all that opportunity. Oftentimes when I do this activity, the number one question I get is, am I doing this for work or am I doing this for like home life? Or am I doing this personal? And the reality is, my hope is that your values get to be aligned and congruent throughout whatever it is you're doing. And if you're not at that place yet, then feel free to think about it through the context of a career or a workplace. But yeah, so read through those. And then we didn't know how many folks we'd have. So if you don't have a deck of cards, there is an online version of this. So if you can scan the QR code, it'll pull them up. There's about 100 words. But yeah, you're just going to sort those into your categories. We're going to give you a decent amount of time to do that because it's a lot of reading and a lot to digest. Are there any questions or things coming up for folks? Yes, use it. You're going to sort the entire deck. Thank you. Good question. Other questions? All right. Thanks. When you're done, and it is perfectly fine if you are not, I would like you to look at your always valued column and identify your top 5. And then there is a worksheet on your table. You're going to write those top 5, and you're going to define them however you define them. So if that means it matches the card, then write the definition on the card. If you have some changes to that definition, go ahead and do that. But I just wanted to give you something to do while our other friends are finishing up.
And everyone should have received a pen in their shape bag, but if you do need a pen, feel free to raise your hand and I'll swing by and drop off a pen. Or just give me a look and I'll use that as my signal. The hand or the look. The hand is good.
For those who are willing and able, using your fingers, each finger being a number, about how much more time do folks need to sort? All right, let's go 3. That's 3, Jenny. Let's go 3 more minutes. All right, this time I'm going to invite folks to engage with their always valued column and identify 5 in there. You might have more than 5. I want you to identify 5, please. Don't worry, you will not be judged on the 5 that you choose. But they will be the 5 that you're working on today. So identify 5 in that always column, and then give you an example of what you can do with definitions. Alrighty, so just wanted to give some examples of how you can choose to define, just to practice with you also. I have 2 of my top 5 on here. One is equity, kind of falls into the moral fulfillment card in there. But how I define that is resource allocation is made in a manner that allows access for all. So acknowledging that we don't all have the privilege and access to the things we need to be able to be successful. So, and then my second one is security. I wrote this one in kind of first person. It's how it made best meaning for myself. So I wrote, my job is stable where I'm not worried about losing it due to budget cuts, and I make enough money to pay my bills and have money for if an emergency would occur. So 2 of my top values. So I'm going to invite you all, I'm going to invite Brayden to share a few of his and then invite you all to start writing your own.
And not to interrupt the thought process, but again, just a couple more examples. One of my top values is growth. The Shape Conference is a good example, an organization that encourages conferences, trainings, workshops. And my other value, creativity. I think this is Bob Iger, but I used to say he's a former CEO, but he's now the current CEO of Disney. But he shares, in order for the sparks of progress to fly, creativity needs to turn. So there's this whole idea that there's not a typical day on the job. So as you're starting to think about what your values are, we all have our own definition of what each of these values are. I also threw in there illustrate. If you're more of a doodler, if you're more of a drawer, that's all fair game as well. So anything that you want to define your values as, this is just your space, because we all define it differently.
And we'll give that warning out now that we will be doing some parent share. So you will be choosing 2 of these to share with your partner. One other thing while you're writing that I want to acknowledge when we think about values is how we're socialized into our values. I think about this very specifically as it relates to my security one. I grew up in a limited income family, and so security is extremely important to me when I think about work, and I think about the ability for my family to have food on the table and a roof over our heads. And so I just wanted to bring that into this space because we don't often do that, and acknowledge that some of us might have been socialized or might not have had a lot of choice in what we have to value in order for survival. And so I know that there can be some vulnerability when I do ask you to share 2 of those values with folks around you. So that's why I'm giving you all the heads up or letting you all know now that that is what we will be doing next.
And just another thought, because we've had this question asked in other workshops similar to this. These are career values, which might be the same as your personal values, but it's okay to say, like, specifically in the career realm, a value of mine is accountability, but not in my personal life. So it's okay to compartmentalize in a setting.
We'll take about 2 more minutes.
And if you are finished and you don't like to be surprised, you can already start to go to the second and third pages and copying your values. So filling out the left column, because you would have to rewrite it, but try to avoid looking if you like surprises on the right column. So you can start copying those over just so you can save some time later on.
The good news is, if you're not done, that might mean that you're an external processor. And so this group time will actually be great for you because then you'll get to express these values through talking it out. So at this time, I would like folks to get into pairs. Yes, pairs. I'm sorry, that means some of you might have to leave your triad. And the reason why is because we want to make sure everyone gets opportunity to share. And so if you end up in a triad, then you won't get as much time. And so to help us, if you would mind, please getting into pairs. So groups of 2. Thank you.
And I do see some blank spaces, and that's okay. Like Jenny mentioned, you can always just talk it out with your partner.
You're up. Now that you're in pairs, it'd be helpful if I actually put on the screen what I want you to talk about. This room is too long. I should have brought a clicker. Okay, so I'd like you with your partner share 2 of your values. So tell your partner what they are, how you define them, and then how do those 2 values show up at work, school, and or home, and how you hope for this value to be demonstrated by your future employer, or it could even be how you hope it would be with your current employer. Whoa, I just got really loud. So those are the 3 questions. I know that at the back of the room they might be a little bit smaller, so I'll read them one more time. You're going to share what 2 of your values are, so you're going to define them with your partner. Then you're going to share how those 2 values show up at work, school, and or home, and then how you would hope that your current or future employer would demonstrate those values to you. This is a friendly reminder if you've been speaking the whole time to go ahead and switch that up and let your partner share. Thank you. If folks could go ahead and find a natural stop in their conversation, that would be great. Alrighty. I'm going to go ahead and ask folks to bring it back to the large group. And what I am hoping for is that there's a couple folks in the space who would like to share their response to the third question. So, right, the session title is Identifying Employers That Match Your Values. So, anyone had some thoughts on how you hope for this for your values or one of your values to be demonstrated by your future employer? All right, well, 1, 2. It's being recorded, so if you don't mind using the mic.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So one of my top 5 values was moral fulfillment. And how I would hope for this to be demonstrated is I not only want to feel that the work I'm doing aligns with my values, but also I want to feel like I can stand by whatever decisions my supervisor or my company is making as a whole. So I think that would just be a way to keep myself in check with this value is, okay, all these big decisions that this company's making, do I feel like I could publicly stand by these? And I think that's how I can kind of make sure that this value is being fulfilled throughout my future career. My name is Ellie.
Nice to meet you, Ellie. Thank you, Ellie. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself as well. Sorry.
My name is Anna Maria, and one of the values I think I would want my future employer to demonstrate is the family value, simply because I'd like for there to be that difference between work and then family. And I think it's very important to put those you care about and you have to take care of first above work. So whenever they come around, you need to go to them. And I think my employer in the future or currently should be able to understand and work with me and a flexibility to put my family first.
Thank you for sharing. So it takes a hot second for it to turn back on. I thank you. I appreciate you both sharing, and hopefully, folks in your small groups were able to have some good conversations about this. And if not, we're gonna get into example and how to actually do this. Right? We got some great examples of I want to make sure that I can stand by what my company's saying. I want to make sure that my family gets to be put first. But the question that we're hoping to answer today or to shine some light on is, well, how do we then identify that, right? Before we sign an offer letter or before we commit to something, how do we know that this organization might be somewhere that matches those values?
So turning to the second page, it should be at the top right. It says, seeking out my values in a sample job. What we'll be doing is, no surprise, there are some sample job descriptions up here. And this is really a way for us to physically and actually tangibly look at some job descriptions and look at your values, put them side to side and say, this is how this organization, this job is helping me seek out my values. And this has a little fun piece of information, if you want to call it that, these are actual job descriptions that we pulled from Handshake on Friday. So these are actually jobs that are open. So for those of you that are graduating, maybe within the next semester, maybe this is a head start to starting to look for some jobs. But just thinking about the job descriptions that we're about to read, there are 5 up here. So there's UNC Health, Tolmar, Amazon, Job Prep, and Deloitte. So we tried to find a variety of positions and companies, ones that are in Colorado, out of Colorado, smaller, bigger. And the best thing that we will talk about is trying to pick one of these 5 positions up here. And if you're a supervisor and you like your job, maybe it's a dream job that you wish you had. My Filipino mother wanted me to be a nurse, but I'm not a nurse, I'm a counselor. So I'd probably pick UNC Health if that's the case. So you can choose a job that you want, or maybe you just like the company, or it just sounds interesting. There's also an internship up here if you ever want to work for the Big Four. One of them is Deloitte. So there's some examples Jenny's gonna share.
Yeah, sorry, I have to go backwards for a second because I was like, we're gonna illuminate how to identify these, and then I totally skipped the slide that gives some examples of how we might identify these. So I'm using my own. It's my own fault. I keep going too high, getting too excited. Okay, using my value of equity, how I might analyze an organization and a job description if maybe it's signaling to me that that equity is a value that matters. So the first one is a lot of companies will have their anti-discrimination policy written on their website, or be like, we don't discriminate based on, and a lot of them just list the ones that legally they have to list. So I'll say in the state of Colorado, state law only protects sex and sexual orientation, including transgender status. That's how it's written. So to me, if an organization is also saying gender expression or gender identity, that might signal to me, okay, they've done a little more work. They're not just copying and pasting what the state law says they need to protect against, but they may be willing to go a little bit further. One is medical benefits, including gender affirming, whether that's hormone, surgery, whatever it might be, but gender affirming medicine. Organizations legally do not have to provide benefits for that. So that's another way that you might be able to, how I would interrogate based on this value of mine. Medical benefits can go to someone like a partner that you're not legally like married to, right? So thinking about how we are in committed relationships that maybe we don't necessarily have written in law that we are married, but are still in a committed relationship, and I want to be able to provide those benefits to that partner. During an interview, staff share their pronouns. That tells me that there's at least some sort of practice. Some of these things might feel like checklist items. So during my interview, I may be asking more specific questions to see, are they just doing this stuff because they've heard if they do this, they'll get a more diverse applicant pool, or are they actually committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion? And the other is that there are multiple folks of color on the team. I'm not a big fan of being the only one at the table, and so that also, and how long they've been there is also an important thing for me. So, right, if all of someone's staff of color, specifically women of color, have all been there for 1 or 2 years, that's a bit concerning to me, because are they committing to retaining staff with marginalized identities? So.
So on page 2, you can already start to see, you copy down your values. When we grab our job descriptions, what we'll be working on, and it might be a yes, and, or either or. What you'll be doing is reading the job description, maybe spending a couple minutes doing that, and then identifying how does it show up in your job description and how it does not. So I'll share growth, job prepped up here. The job description shares the training program for all incoming employees. So for me, that is important. There's actually a checklist, step 1, step 2, step 3, of how they train all of their new employees. And Jenny, if you want to talk about security.
Yeah, so for security, I have the job description does not list the salary range, which is actually illegal in the state of Colorado. But right, when I think about security and you're unwilling to tell me how much I'm going to make, it's a bit concerning and a red flag for me.
So the next few moments, before you come up, and I'm going to just create a flow just so there's more of a buffet style. But if you can enter through this way and then exit that way, but just come in mind of what job that you want to grab so we can quickly grab pieces of paper and make our way back to our table. So spend a few moments and I'll go back. Oh, Jenny already read my mind. These jobs up here are all listed there. And if you're ready to go, you can enter through the center and exit through the side, and then spend a few moments identifying how your values show up or how they do not. Because maybe no organization is perfect. So I'll let you all go ahead and grab a job description. And if you are a supervisor and want to use it based off of your current job, that's also fine.
Ah, sorry. You're distracted. He just woke up from a 2.5 hour nap. Isn't he complaining?
And just being aware of time, I do not want to rush folks, but we are coming up on about 15 minutes left to go. So we'll spend maybe about 5 to 7 minutes on this. So as far along as you can get is great with us. Come as you are and stay as you are. Email. Gotcha. Iko. Is it net ID? Is that the official one? Just checking in. We have about 4 more minutes before we come to before we come together. So starting to wrap up, and again, if you still need more time, nice thing about the physical paper is you can always take it from here. But what we'll be doing is for the next couple minutes, just at your table, so you can stay as you are. You don't have to pair or share necessarily, but just sharing one of your checkerboard boxes of this is the value, this is my organization, and this is how it shows up, or this is how it doesn't show up. So we'll spend a couple minutes or a few minutes just going around your table, quickly sharing just a couple things with the folks around us, and then we'll wrap up from there.
There's also a QR code going around. I think you're all supposed to sign into that as well. That was for us, but I think this is for the SHAPE conference. If you all don't mind scanning that and signing in as it comes around.
So this is kind of being a little rushed, so I do apologize. But the whole idea of this is, no matter what job you pick, if there's a way, to look through and kind of profess your values, look for your values. Up here, since we are a little short on time, one of the things that you could do, because there's no formal assignments, I'm not a teacher anymore, but following this, an action item, which is important, is starting to look at Handshake, LinkedIn, USA Jobs, Indeed. And these are current jobs that are on Handshake. But as you're starting to look for a job or explore internships, I've been asked this many times in my personal job interviews, like what interests you about our organization? How do our values align with yours? So that's a perfect segue into answering that question. If you can actually pinpoint it, working with employers, that's quite impressive. So on the third page, if you scroll, we're not physical. If you turn, you will see a position of interest. So as you are starting, we got all of your emails. What we will do is send you a PDF, and you could do this for all of the jobs that you're applying for. You don't have to, but it could also just be done in your head. So page 3 is for your amusement, for your use after this workshop. And you can start to look for jobs. If you're a supervisor, this is something great that you could do with your student employees after this.
So if this activity was difficult, cool. Wanted to give you some other ways to think about this. If it was hard for you to really identify what does this mean in a value, I think a good question to consider is how would the organization need to change to demonstrate your values? Asking the question in that way might help you start thinking about it from the, okay, what am I actually looking for here? And then what I also wanted to offer real quick is that, and we'll send the slides so you'll get those, but crafting your interview questions. So this is an opportunity to ask questions about office and culture. So I gave some examples of things that might indicate to me that I might apply to this position or to this organization, but I probably need to know more than that. So what other questions am I asking? Am I asking, hey, I have a 1-year-old, and I like to be at all of his doctor's appointments. And what is that, like getting that reaction? So it's kind of that family one. Or, if I disagree, like you get asked a lot, like what type of supervision style, like do you like the best? And you're like, I feel like this is a quiz because you have a certain supervision style and I wish you would just tell me it so then I know if this is gonna work or not. But one you might say is like, I like a supervisor who I can challenge and who can help me think through how my values are showing up in the decisions our organization is making. Right, can start giving you some more insight into that other example we had earlier. And then lastly, just say environmental scans. So oftentimes we get the opportunity to enter into our workspace when we do an interview. And so what are you noticing? Are there a lot of cubicles? Is it really quiet? Is that what you're going for? Is that the vibe you're hoping? Is there a lot of folks just in their offices with their door closed? Is that how you prefer to work? Is that not how you prefer to work? So there's a lot that can also be analyzed and understood just by getting an understanding of what the organization looks like, and could be questions that you ask someone who works in that organization before you even apply. Last thing I'll say is, for the students in the room, Career Center is a place where you can do this exact thing with somebody who is trained to do it. And so if you're in the job search or you're like, I don't even know where to start, stop by our office. We have drop-ins, we have appointments. We have some of our lovely front desk staff in this room right now who can help you out getting connected. So just a reminder and a plug, and if you're graduating, you can use services up to a year past graduation. So we don't just say good luck. You can continue to use services, and then our career fairs and those sorts of things are open to you always. So sorry we didn't have time for questions. I can stick around a little bit. Brayden has to get to his next session, but thank you all so much for being here. We appreciate your attention.
Tess. And I think a lot of you have done this already, but if you can put your cards back into the box, that would save us a lot of time. But it seems like everybody did that already, so we appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your Sundays.